How does it work, or does it work in a larger organization where you only do a part Holacracy? Because I'm an agile coach and I see it's really hard in traditional organizations to try and change a part of that organization.
Yeah, it's really hard. In fact, I think it's much harder to adopt Holacracy in part of the company than it is in a whole company. But it's possible, and there are companies doing it. There are many large global companies, tens of thousands of employees now, that have a department doing Holacracy. We're about to start 2 new engagements with companies that measure, I think, 50,000 and 150,000 employees that are doing it in a department to pioneer it and to hopefully spread it like a virus through that organization. There's the state of Washington, giant state bureaucracy, right? State government entity has a department that's been piloting Holacracy. And they're now moving into the second phase. Harvard Business School is studying that and seeing how it goes. So there's plenty of examples, but I can tell you from experience, man, it's hard. That said, you're better off trying to do all of Holacracy in part of the company than part of Holacracy in all of the company. Right? So think of it, it's kind of like a new sport or a new game. You're not really playing soccer if you say, well, we'll just play by half the rules and we'll master those, and then we'll add the next rule and master that, and you never really get to play soccer that way. Better to play sloppy, messy soccer as best you can with all the rules, and then improve through practice. So that's the way to do it if you have to with that part of the company thing. Other questions? I'll let somebody else choose. Yeah, great. Yeah.
Holacracy is also about evolving and evolution.
Yeah.
Do you have a system about the evolution of Holacracy itself?
Yes, we do. As I mentioned, Holacracy has captured the rules of the game. If this were a sport, there would be a rule book. The rules of that game is captured in a constitution, which is an open source document that spells out the code of Holacracy. Here's how power works in the company, how you can change anything in the company through these processes. It's all spelled out in the constitution. It's the same constitution used by the hundreds and hundreds of companies around the world today that are doing Holacracy. That constitution is managed just like an open source software project. So it's an open source document. You're free to fork it, copy it, create your own derivative versions and try something different with it, whatever. And then all the companies today that are using that as their underlying operating system, right? It's kind of like that. It's like a social technology, an underlying operating system. They feed back into its evolution. So there's a whole community now that is maintaining that document. And when we find edge cases where one rule doesn't quite seem to work in some edge case, that's a sign that some rule needs to evolve to get a little more flexible or to protect from something that's going off or whatever the case is. So we're on version 4.1 right now. And 5.0 is in the works. It's actually an active project of mine is working towards 5.0. There's a bunch of other people contributing to that now too. And it will keep evolving that way. And I think it has to, or it itself will be obsolete pretty quickly. We're learning a lot in the world today about how to do self-managing, self-organizing companies with a technology like this. So it keeps evolving. Oh man, that's a big question. Probably not without getting a little too technical on you, but I'll just say it's really cool. There's a lot of them. If you want to contribute, you can follow it. It's just like any other open source software package. You can see the entire list of issues of what we're looking at changing online. It's all public.
This is the last question here in the front.
How does Holacracy deal with conflicts of interest?
Yeah, so one of the big shifts in Holacracy is trying to get clear and differentiate role and soul, or in other words, the people involved from the roles involved. And a lot of the way we're used to organizing doesn't really make that distinction. We have people that show up, and people have interests, right? And we work together, and we kind of have a bit of a fuzzy boundary between us and our role. We have people over-identified and fused with their roles. One of the key shifts of Holacracy is helping to really separate that so you know when you're speaking on behalf of your role or when you're speaking on behalf of you personally. Right? Then there are processes to integrate, but it starts with that. So if we have different roles, right, then the question isn't just a conflict of interest between us individually. It's, hey, my role has certain needs to get its purpose met. Every role has a purpose, and your role has different needs to get its purpose met, right? And we can have a conversation about that isn't a fight of personalities. It's talking about the different needs of the different roles in a defined process to integrate across them. So there are processes, decision-making methods and processes that integrate across different roles. And that's part of it. When it comes to the personal side, and there's kind of that's another sphere. I won't go into too much here, but it starts with that fundamental distinction. To use a metaphor, As parents, any parents in the room? Right? Okay, now as parents, do you use your child as property, as an extension of yourself for your own personal interests and needs?
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes. Do you try not to? Right. There's a very honest gentleman in the back there. Right? So, yet, I think that's how we use our organizations today. Right? We use our roles that way. We use our organizations. We often look at them as property, as an extension of ourselves, and we try to use them to get our needs met. If we did that with our kids, we would be appalled. Right? So one of the shifts Holacracy does is say, no, you're a steward of this thing. This organization is its own organism. And these roles are, kind of a piece of that, another organism in that, and they depend on you. So the first conflict of interest to watch for is your own to your roles. Don't blur that boundary any more than you want a parent manipulating and using their child for their own gain. Right? You want a parent that's healthy, that's meeting their own needs, that's in a healthy relationship with. You don't want the parent subsumed by the child either. You want a healthy adult-to-adult relationship. And it starts with you to your role. And once you get that, then you can get role to role and soul to soul in the organization. It's all about boundaries.